Every time you swipe a credit card in Istanbul, transfer money through a Lebanese bank, or watch oil prices fluctuate on Bloomberg, you're witnessing the aftershock of a financial weapon that carved up an empire. Between 1854 and 1881, European bankers didn't just lend money to the Ottoman Empire, they engineered its systematic dismantling. The debt they created was so mathematically precise, so structurally inescapable, that it transformed the Middle East into a collection of financial colonies without firing a single shot. This wasn't banking. This was conquest by spreadsheet.
The Ottoman Public Debt Administration. If you've never heard that name, you felt its legacy. The OPDA was the blueprint for every modern debt restructuring program, every IMF intervention, every sovereign wealth extraction scheme that followed. Its fingerprints are on the Suez Canal, the oil fields of Iraq, and the banking networks that still funnel Middle Eastern capital through London and Paris. The men who built this machine didn't wear uniforms. They wore top hats and carried ledger books, and they conquered more territory than Napoleon ever dreamed of.
1854. The Ottoman Empire controlled 3 continents, commanded armies of 500,000 men, and ruled over 35 million subjects. But Sultan Abdülmecid I had a problem that no amount of military might could solve: cash flow. The Crimean War was bleeding the treasury dry. Traditional Islamic finance forbade interest payments, so Ottoman rulers had always funded wars through taxation and conquest. But this war was different. The scale was industrial. The costs were unprecedented. The Sultan needed capital, and he needed it fast. So he did something no Ottoman ruler had done in 600 years of empire. He took a loan from European bankers. The first Ottoman bond, issued in London, raised £3 million at 6% interest. It seemed like salvation. It was actually the first nail in the empire's coffin. Before we dive deeper into how financial engineering dismantled one of history's greatest empires, take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden mechanics of global power. The stories they don't teach in business school are often the most important ones. The mathematics of imperial collapse began with a simple miscalculation. Ottoman finance ministers assumed they could service European debt the same way they'd always funded the state, through agricultural surpluses and trade revenues. But European bankers understood something the Ottomans didn't. Compound interest was a time bomb with a very long fuse. That first £3 million loan quickly became a £5 million obligation, then £8 million. By 1875, the Ottoman Empire owed £200 million to European creditors. The annual debt service alone consumed 50% of the empire's total budget. But the real genius wasn't in the lending, it was in the structure. European banks created a debt ecosystem so complex that default became impossible without total economic surrender. They issued new bonds to pay off old ones, creating a perpetual refinancing cycle. They tied loan agreements to specific revenue streams: customs duties, tobacco taxes, stamp duties. Most brilliantly, they convinced the Ottomans to guarantee these loans against the empire's most valuable assets, its infrastructure and natural resources. The vertical integration of Ottoman debt was a masterpiece of financial engineering. British banks controlled the lending. French institutions handled the bond issuances. German firms provided the industrial equipment purchased with borrowed money. Austrian financiers managed the currency exchanges. It was a closed loop where European capital flowed into Ottoman coffers, then immediately flowed back to European contractors, suppliers, and creditors. The empire became a financial washing machine, cleaning European money through Ottoman hands. Meanwhile, the real collateral, the Suez Canal shares, the tobacco monopolies, the railway concessions, slowly transferred from Ottoman control to European ownership. By 1881, the empire couldn't even collect its own taxes. The Ottoman Public Debt Administration, staffed entirely by European appointees, took direct control of the empire's most profitable revenue streams. They collected the customs duties in Istanbul, managed the tobacco revenues in Damascus, and administered the stamp taxes in Baghdad. The Sultan still sat on his throne, but European bankers controlled his treasury. But the real cost wasn't measured in pounds sterling or francs,
It was measured in sovereignty. The debt trap created a parallel government inside the Ottoman Empire, one that answered to London and Paris, not Constantinople. European creditors demanded fiscal reforms that prioritized debt service over everything else. Schools went unfunded, hospitals closed, military salaries went unpaid. Meanwhile, European companies extracted wealth from Ottoman territories using infrastructure built with Ottoman debt. British firms mined Ottoman copper using railways financed by Ottoman bonds. French corporations harvested Ottoman tobacco using equipment purchased with Ottoman loans. The empire had become a machine for converting its own resources into European profits. When Ottoman subjects rebelled against this economic colonialism, the empire couldn't afford to suppress the uprisings. The army was bankrupt, the treasury was empty, the bureaucracy was paralyzed. European creditors had achieved what centuries of military conquest couldn't. They had made resistance economically impossible.
The architecture of Ottoman debt began to crumble under its own mathematical weight. By 1875, the empire was spending more on debt service than on its entire military. Tax revenues couldn't keep pace with compound interest. New loans were needed just to pay the interest on old ones. The Sultan declared bankruptcy, but European creditors had anticipated this move. They activated the enforcement mechanisms built into every loan agreement. The Ottoman Public Debt Administration wasn't just a collection agency. It was a shadow government with legal authority to seize imperial assets. European warships appeared in Ottoman ports. European administrators took control of Ottoman banks. European engineers assumed management of Ottoman railways. The empire discovered that bankruptcy didn't mean freedom from debt. It meant total financial occupation. Internal opposition came from the Young Turks, who understood that the empire was being dissolved by mathematics rather than military force. But their resistance only accelerated the process. European creditors used political instability as justification for deeper financial intervention.
The Ottoman debt crisis disappeared from mainstream historical narratives because it revealed an uncomfortable truth. Financial colonialism was more effective than military conquest. European powers learned they could control territories without administering them, extract wealth without governing populations, and maintain dominance without occupying capitals. The Ottoman model became the template for economic subjugation across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. But acknowledging this meant acknowledging that modern international finance was built on predatory lending practices. It meant recognizing that the global financial system wasn't a natural evolution of trade. It was a weapon designed to transfer wealth from debtor nations to creditor institutions. Academic historians, many working for universities funded by the same banking families that engineered the Ottoman collapse, had little incentive to examine these uncomfortable parallels. The Ottoman Public Debt Administration was quietly written out of textbooks, reduced to a footnote in the story of the empire's inevitable decline.
The Ottoman debt trap never ended. It just changed names. The IMF's structural adjustment programs use the same playbook: emergency loans tied to policy reforms that prioritize creditor interests over national sovereignty. The World Bank's development projects mirror the infrastructure schemes that emptied Ottoman treasuries. Modern sovereign debt crises in Argentina, Greece, and Lebanon follow the identical pattern: emergency lending, compound interest, asset seizures, and parallel governance structures controlled by international creditors. The banking houses that engineered Ottoman debt, Rothschild, Credit Mobilier, Imperial Ottoman Bank, evolved into today's global financial institutions. Their descendants still manage Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds, still structure petroleum revenues through London and Paris, still use debt instruments to extract wealth from resource-rich nations. The geography has changed. The mathematics haven't.
Debt is sovereignty in reverse. The more you owe, the less you own. The Ottoman Empire learned this lesson over 60 years of gradual financial strangulation. Today's emerging markets are learning it again through Bitcoin volatility, currency crises, and IMF interventions. The machine that carved up the Ottoman Empire is still running. It just processes different currencies now.
Did this deep dive into financial imperialism change how you think about modern debt crises? Drop a capital B in the comments if you made it to the end, or tell me which forgotten financial empire you want me to examine next. The connections between historical wealth extraction and modern global finance run deeper than most people realize. Time has the answers, and I'll show you where to look.